Welcome to the AI-powered inbox, where we look to make AI accessible for email and lifecycle marketers. I'm your host. My name is Adam Bianco, founder and chief strategist at Off Trail Marketing. And today we're talking with a successful agency owner about how he is leveraging AI internally within his agency itself, as well as with clients. So with me today is Will Pearson, the co-founder and co-CEO of Scalero. Will, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Happy to be here. Always great chatting with you.
We've chatted a handful of times over the years. We met at a fantastic email conference. If you aren't familiar with it, it's called Unspam. It was in Greenville, South Carolina for several years.
I went by myself because I live in Charleston, South Carolina, just to check it out. Driving distance. Was blown away by how authentic that show is, and just a room of email marketers talking about marketing.
Yeah, it is very much an email marketing show for email marketers by email marketers. And if you haven't already, I interviewed the co-founder of Really Good Emails, Mike Nelson, on the pod a couple weeks ago. So check that out if you haven't seen it. But Will, today I really want to talk about how you're leveraging AI at Scalero in a multitude of ways. But before we dig into it, let's rewind the clock a little bit. Tell me about Scalero. How long has it been around? How did you get started? Why did you get started with your own agency?
Founded Scalero in 2019 with my co-founder, Brant. And we had worked together for a number of years at Vivino, the wine app, and really saw that company go from a 10-person startup to a global organization with people in dozens of countries and, a ton of revenue. And that really happened largely because of email marketing. So even though I started my career in merchandising and retail and operations and e-commerce and things like that, I inevitably was drawn to email and lifecycle marketing because I was looking at the P&L of Vivino and where the revenue was coming from, and it was largely email. So Brant was running the CRM team at the time while I was running the e-commerce side. And we would sit and strategize for hours on how to get more out of email, what we should be doing with merchandising, with the e-commerce side in general. And eventually we realized that we were both pretty knowledgeable at this and both had some interest in being entrepreneurs. And we had some other concepts and ideas that we threw out there, but ultimately it came back to lifecycle and just a world that we knew really well and had seen scale a company at a huge level. And that's really what inspired us to go on our own and see if we could do this and help others with that scale like we had seen at Vivino.
And so you've grown this from two people to start? And then how big is the agency now?
Yeah, just the two of us got going for a while, used some contractors here and there, and then realized that we wanted this to scale and wanted it to turn into a real business. And, we've had some ups and downs along the way, but 6+ years in, we now have about 35 people. We're working with 55 or so clients on a given basis. And it's been a very fun, rewarding, challenging journey for sure.
Now, a lot has changed since, whether it's 30 plus people later, 6+ years later, but a lot has changed in the world of email marketing over the past couple of years. How has it changed from 2019 to 2025? And maybe specifically over the past couple of years in terms of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and then, of course, the infusion of AI into all of that.
Right. So one of our big hypotheses in starting the company was that there weren't great tools to help with the workflow of email marketing. So from strategy to design to coding to implementation, it just never felt like things really worked very smoothly together. And we built a tool to try to solve for that we call Tiramisu. And this will make me feel and sound old, but when we started the company, not many people were using Figma at the time. So we actually, in Tiramisu originally, had some kind of design component to it where you could design emails in there. And then we saw Figma and saw some clients using Figma, and we said, okay, let's not compete in that space. And, there's been a lot of evolution in design, in project management, and then within the email softwares themselves, the marketing automation tools, where they've all gotten really good at creating emails and the workflow around that, and the drag and drop tools and using code and dynamic logic and things like that. So that's come a really long way in 6 years. And then within the last couple of years, it's really accelerated with AI. And that has shown its impact in many different ways. But the fact that so many companies are now using AI to create copy and content, not necessarily great copy and content, but nonetheless, that used to be a huge blocker to creating really robust email programs and lifecycle programs in general. And beyond that, the workflow automations and just speeding up, how quickly you can get from idea to a finished email. It's possible. It's not necessarily happening, but we're seeing all the tools that are out there where it could eventually really help speed things up and personalize at a level that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, it's so true. AI is just becoming part of every step in the process, it seems like. Oftentimes, I feel like from the outside, people think of it just as it's replacing copywriters or we're swapping out graphics because people see that that's what gets the attention on social media. But to your point, it is how does it make us more efficient in the day to day, whether it's communication or a task management or anything along those lines from communication with our clients as a whole. There's so many pieces of it behind the scenes. And then of course what customers see and in the inbox itself. Before we like dig into those individual pieces, 2, 3 years ago when OpenAI was just getting on the scenes, what was your initial reaction to it, whether as a user and then maybe a little bit as a founder of your agency itself?
I remember just having a lot of fun with the tool, right? It was like this, you're almost back using an instant messaging tool and getting instant feedback and results, and almost like what originally it felt like what was the funniest response you could get from ChatGPT, and then you share that with your friends or your colleagues. And I think it was hard to really fathom, and it still is, honestly, what the capabilities are of these tools and the power of it. But I've really embraced it as a thought partner and almost a in different ways. I've trained it to be an executive at Scalero and try to think that way. Or if I'm doing a task I've never done before, I ask it to be an expert in that task and kind of walk me through it. And again, we're just kind of scratching the surface on what this can be. We've used the API to connect it to some of our internal tools to try to make those tools work a little more effectively. Ultimately, as an agency owner, my goal is to reduce the number of clicks that my team has to manage on a daily basis. Yeah, I can just continue to take that down so that they can be more efficient, be more thoughtful, and we can deliver more on a daily basis. That's what I want to do. But it feels like there are an infinite amount of ways to get there. And these last 2 years, I've really been trying to parse through all that and figure out what can actually be effective and what matters.
I think it's interesting when people talk about just new tooling overall. And I think back even to my journey of graduating from Ohio State in 2009 in marketing and communications, everything was very traditional. It was all about TV ads and radio and things like that. And so everything that has come since in the digital marketing world, we, and I'm sure probably you and marketers in general, have continuously had to teach ourselves over and over and over again because we weren't taught any of this in college. That didn't exist. For now, recently, over the past 2 years or so, I feel like I'm going back to school. Like my brain has been working on overdrive again to learn a whole new way of thinking, whole new way of doing things, and it's refreshing and challenging more so now than maybe a decade ago when you're learning digital marketing kind of for the first time and teaching yourself. But it really is just a whole different ball game in terms of how we're leveraging these brand new tools in the day to day and in general.
Yeah, I see the role of the marketer, and especially in life cycle, evolving to being a little more akin to a air traffic controller as opposed to a clicker, right? Someone always executing, and we know how long it takes to. If you're listening to this, you know how long it takes to build an email, right? But imagine a world where you're not building emails, but there are thousands or maybe even millions of unique emails going out at a given basis to your audience, because everything is AI driven and personalized, and different images and different copy and different time of day, and that that's a lot happening, and you still need people at the controls to make sure that things aren't breaking. So that's how I'm thinking about it. And as these tools evolve, we need to know how to use them. We can't be concerned with AI taking over our lives and taking our jobs, but rather how do we use it? What actually works? What doesn't work? And eventually, how do we put them all together? So that's why I like that air traffic controller reference, where there's going to be a ton of moving pieces around. And if you let things run wildly, it'll be a disaster for your customers and your company. But if it is under control and you're able to pull the levers and move things around, you could have a pretty amazing program, even with AI doing so much of the work.
Yeah, well, let's start there actually. Let's start with your team. How have you just really enabled your team to use the various AI tools and be able to experiment and figure out how it works and how best to use it?
Yeah, we've tried to really give as much tooling as possible to the team. So we started out giving everyone ChatGPT Pro access to use as they need to, right? We have use cases that we recommend and some prompts and things like that. But we start there, and then we've tried to leverage AI to automate some of the workflow internally. If anyone's worked at an agency, if you get a request from a client, that usually turns into a ticket, which gets assigned to somebody, and then you decide what the urgency is, the due date, the context around it. There's probably questions back and forth. AI is pretty good at doing that. Obviously, there's mistakes made and you still need a human involved, but we're trying to do things like that just, again, just sort of reduce the amount of distraction and clicks along the way. And then lastly, the marketing automation tools that we work in on a daily basis, they are investing heavily into AI, as they should, understanding what the new features are, how they impact our work. That is super important to our success. And again, going back to the how do we reduce the number of clicks that we're making? And I think the tools are doing a great job in investing in that. If it's a segment builder, something along those lines that are just speeding up the workflow and cutting out the clicks so we can be more thoughtful in the work that we're doing.
Before we dig into the various tools, at least on the ESP side of things, let's talk about the task management aspect in the workflow. Can you dig in a little bit about and maybe share if you want to the project management tool that your team uses in really how that process happens when a client sends something over? What is that process like, and how does AI get infused with all of that?
Yeah, we use Notion as our project management tool, and we're often communicating with our clients via Slack. So, we create a really basic automation even before AI was everywhere, where if you reacted to a Slack message with a certain emoji, it would create a ticket in Notion. So that is an evolving process to start, to try to use AI within there. And then, we've got things like summaries from Slack or summaries of email performance, that AI is doing to help the team with understanding what's happening with a client or understanding how things are performing. So again, just kind of providing tools more so than replacing any particular task, and just kind of speeding things along the way and reducing, copy pasting and things like that.
Yeah. Have you seen it be, whether anecdotally or through some of your metrics that you're tracking, that the team is working faster because of this?
I think so. It's for one, we've had plenty of automations and things we've set up over the years that just are never used, right? That's the number one indicator. People are actually using these. And then from my seat, I'm constantly just looking at productivity, profitability, things like that at a client level, and trying to find that right balance between being productive, profitable, but not overtaxing individuals across the company. So if I can see that an account manager can take on, one more client than they could 6 months ago and still not have to increase their communications or, efforts at the same level, if it kind of just stays flat because things are moving in an automated way, that's successful, hopefully, for everybody, where they don't have to put in more hours, but they're able to work with more companies too, and still provide the level of service that we expect. So there's a lot of inputs into that output, but trying to understand all of those all together and how they fit in.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Let's switch gears then from the project management side to more of that ESP, CRM, marketing automation tools. What have you seen, whether it's the individual tool itself or just the overall features that span multiple tools? What have you seen that your team's been actively using in the AI space? Because we know all these tools are just trying to leverage and releasing new features every week, it seems like. What has your team seen that's actually been helpful?
Yeah, I think the baseline expectation now, it seems, for these tools are uh, around content and then around segments as well. So I think with content, they're all assisting with coming up with subject lines and pre-headers and maybe even evaluating your email before or after it sends and providing input around that. And then the segment builders, I think, are pretty interesting in just describing what you're trying to achieve and then building the segment from there. I think where these tools are trying to get to are automating more of the workflow creation. So when you've got a flow with 15 branches and 5 emails and 4 SMSs and each one and they're conditional, that's a ton of effort for someone to execute. And I've seen some inroads in speeding that up as well. And then I think this other frontier that, I think every day I see an announcement of an MCP server being released by these tools. And I don't know how highly adopted those are yet, but super curious to figure out, some really interesting use cases around that and, getting, again, multiple tools speaking to each other, to be able to, again, just send better emails, right? That's essentially all we're trying to do in the end in a lot of different ways. So still, again, like it's moving super fast, trying to understand how all these things work together.
Yeah, I think the goal in so much of all this is to send better, more relevant, more personalized emails across the board. As marketers, many of us have information in a variety of different spots. So leveraging these tools and services to be able to then bring it all together because it doesn't always sit in that marketing automation platform. So be able to pull it all together makes that platform much more powerful. I've been using I've dabbled into the segmentation builders and I think with like mixed results personally. Some of it, if I'm trying to do something relatively basic and straightforward, maybe basic to intermediate, excuse me, it can be helpful. Although it really depends on how comfortable I think you are with the platform. Because also, if you're doing something basic and intermediate, you probably can set it up pretty quickly yourself. At least
Mm.
I can in the platform. But once you get really to advanced, and maybe I need to spend more time in the prompt. But at some point, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to still do this manually. However, on the flip side, and I think what you alluded to is that when you're managing really complex flows and automations that have multiple different branches and the amount of time it takes to update one email versus the 20 emails that may be in this thing, that can take a while. And so the more and more these automation platforms can help streamline that process, as we know, it's not just building it, then there's the QA portion of it all to make sure as one person's in there adapting 20 different emails, their wires aren't getting crossed along the way because it's very easy to mix things up if you aren't doing it very methodically.
That's right. Yeah, our experience has been similar, and sometimes the danger of offering a prompt to a marketer is they ask for the world, and it may not even be capable. The tool may not even be capable of doing what the prompt is being written as anyway, and so then you end up maybe with some disappointment or something that wasn't what you asked for. Whereas it may be more obvious when those restrictions occur when you're doing it yourself. So I've seen that happen a bunch too, and yeah, I think on your point of just how many steps are involved, we're in the same boat, right? So we think about the strategy side. Yeah, AI can probably support you on a strategy. I don't think AI is ready to come up with a whole life cycle strategy for a company. Maybe it can help organize
Probably
a brief
not.
for you.
That's our job right now, as of
Exactly.
now.
Yeah. Maybe it can help you with the briefing, right? Just having it organized in a way that, others can understand. Can help you with the coding, but probably can't do the full email properly yet. QA, the things you're mentioning, it feels like it continues to be able to help with assisting, but it's, not at the point where it's taking any full step out of the process. So that's why, again, it's step by step. It's steps within each step. Where can we improve and speed things up a little bit, knowing that we're still quite a bit away from AI just deciding, okay, here's an amazing flow I'm going to create for you because I understand your business.
Right. You kind of alluded to this earlier, but AI can be very good at um, finding the holes and the gaps, or something where you're learning something for the first time, or building something out for a client. You don't know what you don't know, but AI probably does, or at least can
Mhm.
help point you in that direction and find those gaps. So it's something even coming up with a podcast like this as a first time podcaster. I don't know the process what that's like or the tools I should be using. I, of course, will Google that and Gemini will spit something out for me. But at the same time, I'm like, tell me the roadmap and getting something like this launched. And I can kind of figure it out and game plan it versus me figuring out that step. Once you do the one thing, then you get to the next thing. At least I have a better idea of the route forward. I think AI does a really nice job of finding those holes or thinking from a different perspective or sharing an email and saying, these are my ICPs. How are they going to view this email and will they understand it the way it's written and things along those lines that you can get other perspectives very, very quickly.
That's right. Yeah, it's definitely raised the baseline of knowledge, at least in terms of expectation of knowledge for our clients and what they expect out of us. I think the questions we get from clients they seem to be getting more complex by nature and more how can we achieve this and less so what is the rule about unsubscribe buttons, right? Like there's because that's one question, you get the answer, and they're probably
Mhm.
doing that themselves, so they don't need us for that. And I think that's exciting, right? It kind of challenges us to step up our game as well and try to be ahead of the client in terms of knowledge and life cycle, but also using AI, leveraging it properly in ways that maybe our clients are not quite doing it yet. So, it just continues to, I think, push us in a better direction where it's more complex and more interesting type of work.
I'm really fascinated now. What's the expectation from the client on leveraging AI, whether it's the expectation, comfortability? What is that now? And maybe how has that changed over the past 12 to 24 months?
It really differs client by client, as you can imagine. It can be a bit sensitive even to discuss because there is that segment of the population that is fearful that AI is going to take all of our jobs, and even just bringing it up uh, creates this reaction from them that you don't want, as a vendor. We've also seen other companies that are completely bought in and they want us to use every tool possible to automate everything. And as long as we're the ones thinking about it and working on it and not them, they're happy with that. So it's a wide range. I think a lot of companies are becoming more comfortable with content being created by AI or at least started by AI and then adjusted by a human from there. That's not to say copywriters are in trouble because we actually leverage copywriters more now than we ever have because again, clients are expecting high level content and we can deliver AI level content, but then to get it to the next level, we're still relying on humans. And I don't see that
Yeah.
changing anytime soon. So it really depends on the client and we kind of tread lightly to start, and then we see what their expectation is, and we try not to, use AI in cases where they're not comfortable. We want to represent the client, be an extension of their team.
Sure. And it seems like there's a relative consensus that there's always not only a human in the loop, but a human final touch where no matter Gemini, OpenAI, Claude, what have you, is doing, a human is actually reviewing it on the back end, checking it, making sure it makes sense. It's almost like an AI sandwich to a certain degree. Humans on the front end doing the right prompt or coming up with the strategy itself. And then depending on how AI is involved, it's either does a good chunk of work in the middle or at least a small portion to expedite the process or do QA or anything along those lines. And then a human like comes back into the process at the end to make sure everything's all well and good.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. There's probably some AI builders and advocates out there who would tell you that we're being too cautious, right? And we don't need so much human intervention. I think
Probably
those are
not.
more,
Yeah.
as I say,
Soon enough, it might not be.
yeah, yeah. I think those are more anecdotal than reality from what we've seen. I think, you want the human to be involved at this stage, but if it can just, again, make things go a little faster, be a little more efficient, and make fewer mistakes because of it, that's a net positive relative to a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm sure we're not too far from and maybe it's here now. I'm sure there's a couple tools out there just really making personalization at scale and creating those one-to-one emails and adapting copy to those. I'm sure that's happening currently. I'm not using them, but you can't really have that much of a human touch point at the end because if they're creating these singular touch points, then you're taking an email that's going to thousands of people and then making it individual for that one person. That would be impossible to have a human involved. It's exciting idea, but you also kind of cross your fingers and hope that hopefully the AI is not sending something offensive to that person along the way.
Right. Yeah, I think in the transactional email world, that's a little more possible right now, and, we've seen a couple tools emerge, at least in the startup phase, that are attempting to do that, or, maybe someone has canceled a subscription and you have to send them notification of that, and perhaps you can tweak the copy a little bit or the way the email looks that gets them maybe to resubscribe without an aggressive marketing way. But I do feel like a wider marketing type of message, still very challenging to do one-to-one personalized, but step by step, right? It's transactional, and then maybe it's a cart abandon, and then maybe a post purchase from there, and we can maybe get there over the years. We'll see.
I'm curious. We talked about, of course, how your team is using it with clients and some of the tools itself, but you're also using it as lead generation tools and helping with your own website. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been adapting and involving AI into that lead generation side of things over the past year?
We redid our website at the beginning of 2025. That was because weren't really using AI tools to manage our site. Total revamp, updated our tooling, used AI to create copy, and then again, the human intervention from there. And then we spent most of the rest of the year just creating content and trying to turn those brand and our website into a resource for lifecycle marketers. In our opinion, we have 35 people that live and breathe lifecycle all day, every day. So we should have a lot of things to share with others in this space. And we've used AI very intently there. So we've built some tools for our site. So one, for example, is an AI subject line generator where we've anonymized some data we have around how emails perform and how subject lines perform, and we've put that into a tool. It's something you can easily do in ChatGPT and Gemini, but maybe our tool just it's a little more user friendly, or it has a little bit different data in it than they do. And it's free. You go on the site, you use it, just like we have resources around deliverability and on what design tools to use and how to design for dark mode. And we've got just kind of all that stuff out there because we just want to be a trusted source for lifecycle marketers. If that means they end up doing work with us, great. But if they end up just using the site and getting value from it, that's great too. That's really how we're thinking about this.
Yeah, of course. And I imagine you didn't build your own LM to do it, but you built off of what?
OpenAI.
Okay. So that was the move. So you adapted, you took what OpenAI has, of course, in ChatGPT, and then put your own expertise in it to build this tool for folks to use.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's very simple. It's one input, two inputs if you'd like, but essentially, what are you trying to achieve with your email? Or you can put in your own subject line and then get some variations of that from there. So very simple, very easy to use. And if it's a thought starter for you and just makes you a little bit more efficient and makes your emails perform a little bit better, that's great.
Have you seen this tactic in building out these tools and resources? Has this been helpful driving traffic to your website?
Yes, yes, it's working for sure. I think the approach we've taken is really around providing value. Like I said, we work with some pretty advanced lifecycle marketers. And so we think about what questions do they have? What do they need to know? It's pretty easy to spin up a blog post and say, what is a welcome series? Or, what is a pre-header, right? Like you can kind of explain that, but the questions that our clients are asking are much more advanced, than that. And so they're asking questions like the view in browser link at the top of an email. Is that necessary? Is it compliant? What's the performance of it? Things like that. And, it's just one example, but we want to take that and turn it into content that then we can share with our clients and advance everyone's knowledge that we're working with.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think we are getting to the more lightning round questions of it. So we talked through before we get there. We talked through how you as an agency have adapted AI so far, from task management to the tools you're using from marketing automation platforms, then on the lead generation side of things. I guess before we get to the lightning round questions, and I guess any other ways from website lead generation resource that you have that AI has helped with, or I guess maybe something that's on the roadmap that you can give us a sneak peek?
I found, just as a founder and owner, there's a lot of things that I want visibility into that's been hard historically for me to have visibility into. And AI has helped with that. So there's one tool I've been using a lot of that's called Lindy, Lindy, and it's creating automations for us. A really simple example of that is we talked about the website and all the new content we're creating. I just wanted a summary every week of everything that went live on our site, everything that we sent on LinkedIn, any newsletters we sent. It sounds kind of simple, like someone could just probably take 5 minutes and find that, but I didn't want to ask somebody to take 5 minutes and do that every week. And so I was able to automate that where there's a Slack message every Monday morning saying, here's what we accomplished. And that also helps us with idea generation. Okay, if this blog went out, then that's probably a good thing to feature in the newsletter. And oh, we're seeing traffic on this page. So there's a lot of different ways to take something that is probably possible, but somewhat manual and just automate it. And then you just get a little bit smarter over time.
Right. And we spend an uncomfortable amount of time, and maybe not uncomfortable is right the word, but just so much time on reporting and talking about what we've accomplished, and that's all well and good, but it takes us away from that, like actually doing the work. We have to take a step back and reformat something in one way or another, make a presentation, and it can help with that and just expedite some of those just really manual processes. All right, so let's move to the lightning round portion of this all. One question I have asked kind of everyone so far, for the most part, is what email trend is overrated or underrated? Anything that you've seen from what you do across the board?
I think overrated is send time and day of send, which might be a hot take because people are really focused on dynamic send times and personalized send times right now. It does not matter when you send the email if it's not a good email. And so I think the product, the messaging, that is what matters. And if you sent that at midnight on Friday night versus Monday at 11 a.m., I don't know that it matters. It's what matters is what's inside the email.
Yeah, I generally would agree with that. I think there's maybe some times that aren't the best, but I've seen with clients that sometimes they really want to get it out at 10 a.m., but then we get it out at 2:30 for whatever reason, and it works just as well. I'm always a big proponent of take the few extra hours or the few extra days to get it right. To your point, make it quality content because no one's sitting around waiting for your email to drop. Maybe if it's a special sale that you've already hyped up, that's an exception. But anything else, just take the extra time to do it well.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Back to AI for a moment. What are you looking forward to AI doing?
We have a lot of discussion internally about QA, and we've used a lot of different tools to help with QA. We've thrown a lot of people at QA because, the old theory of more eyes, the better. And it just feels like this is something AI should be really good at this stage. So we are trying to unlock that. So hopefully 12 months from now, we are sitting here and AI is QAing our emails with 99.9999% accuracy. And we can take those human eyes that are tired and staring at a screen all day away from that responsibility and focus more on the creative stuff.
Yeah, that would be amazing. If AI can take the QA out of it, I know oftentimes I'll have to look at something, I'll save it for the next day where I do have that fresh set of eyes if I'm reviewing my own stuff. So AI doing that, which it does some now, but if it can do that more, that'd be great. All right, enough business talk. What is your current binge or maybe a recent favorite in the world of whether it's TV show, podcast, book, etc.? What do you got?
I just finished the book. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality, and the author is Will Guidara. I'm not sure exactly how to say that.
Okay.
He used to run 11 Madison Park in New York City, turning that into the incredible restaurant it is now. And I recommend it for anyone who's providing a service, essentially, right? Like his approach to service at a restaurant really resonated with me working with clients. And I would jump on that for sure. Fun storytelling, not exactly a boring how-to business book, but just a really interesting book generally. On the TV side, I've a very random show currently watching. It's called Better Things. It's from like 10 years ago. Pamela Alden, who's kind of somebody you'd recognize, but may not be able to place her. Just a funny, mindless show, 20-minute episode type of thing. It helps to decompress a little bit late at night.
What was it called again?
Better Things.
Better Things. All right. I'm going to have to look into that. I'm really intrigued. I wrote down Unreasonable Hospitality. I was in the restaurant industry for 15 years in teens and 20s. And
Mm.
so I love that world. I think a lot of those books, from whether it was Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain from years ago to potentially this, I really enjoy those books. And there's so much connection between just the restaurant industry and what we do now, whether it's working with teams or we're working with clients.
Yeah, I don't want to overhype it, but if you have that baseline knowledge of the restaurant industry and now you're doing your own thing, working with clients, this might be a pretty amazing book.
Okay. Well, one more, put you on the spot a little bit. Anything you like to do more, less of?
What I am trying to do is focus on myself a little bit more. It's probably relatively common, but we talk when you're running a business, and I have two little kids and a partner, and all the things going on in life, sometimes without even realizing it, I haven't given myself any time. And it's often I don't realize it until it's a little too late. And I can't put my finger on why I'm not quite operating the way I want to. So I'm learning a few ways to do that and what kind of recharges me, and trying to, make time for that.
Yeah, I feel like we could probably have a separate podcast just talking about that as a small business owner myself with twin 1-year olds at home. There's not enough time in the day for just about anything. And yeah, you can go days, if not weeks, and realize, oh, I haven't done X for myself.
Yeah.
Fun
Yeah, exactly.
parenting and running a business, two full-time jobs into itself.
Yes. Yes. I will say that when I became a parent, though, I think the business was better off for it, because I learned a lot about delegating and prioritizing. And those were good things for Scalero for sure. I don't
Yeah.
have to work 15 hours a day for this business to be successful. I can work a lot less than that, and we can still do.
Yeah, and realistically, there's not enough time for that.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
babies, and kids and family will take away the time, and rightfully so. I think that's probably where it's much more fun anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how can we follow you? Where can we find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't post all the time. I know there's plenty of founders who tell me, what are you doing? You need to be out there. I prefer to do the work and then share the results of that work out there. Our Scalero LinkedIn page is actually quite interesting right now. All that new content I'm talking about and tools we're posting there, and then I'll post on my own too. But just send me a message if you want to chat. I'm always happy to chat with people. And Adam, when you started your own thing, I think that's when I saw it, the first thing I said was, I want to chat. And it's not like, I'm
Yes,
expecting
I
you
can
to,
confirm.
yeah. And it's not that, I feel like I have a lot of wisdom to share. I just like learning from other people and understanding, their approach and experiences. And so just find me, and I'll chat. I'm happy to.
Yeah, of course. Well, I know I learned a thing or two on this conversation. I hope everyone else did. So, Will, thank you so much for the time, and thanks for joining the pod. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Great discussion here. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.